Welcome back to Stuff About Money. I'm Xavier Angel, certified financial planner, and my co-host, Erik Garcia, certified financial planner. Erik, how you doing this morning?
Good, man. How are you making out?
I'm doing good. So this morning we are podcasting, and
We are.
it,
This is a podcast.
so this is truly just a conversation on this podcast. It's different. It's a different format. So Erik, you came into my office this morning with a question and wanted to talk through some stuff, and so the idea was, hey,
Was it more of a
let's tr-
question, or was I just? I think it was more of me venting.
yes.
Or so that
So
tends to happen. Xavier and I will walk into each other's office and just vent for 10 minutes, and then walk away.
and that's the beauty of having us in the same office, and so my suggestion to Erik was stop. I love where this is going. Let's jump on the podcast and discuss it.
Okay.
So, why don't you start us off by what that thought is?
Just really simple, man. I think there's this myth. I'm not gonna say it's a myth because sometimes it is true. Okay, but there's this notion that complexity is better than simplicity when we're dealing with financial planning. We've all come across, you and I have come across scenarios with clients. We've been asked questions about these complex planning strategies that leave us scratching our head as to why this client's even pursuing it because it doesn't make any sense for them. But yet, our simple recommendation often sometimes comes across in their minds as maybe remedial, not as sexy. So there's that notion, that myth, that complexity is better than simplicity, which I wholeheartedly push back. I remember years,
Right, and
years.
let me address that before you jump in there. And I think a large part of why that myth is that complexity is better than simplicity is because it's how people have been groomed over the last 12 to 15 years when it comes to financial planning.
Who's grooming
That
them?
you get companies that have these programs, and these
Mhm.
programs are geared towards pushing individuals to purchase life insurance as part of the financial plan.
I'm not just talking about life insurance as
Right.
as being complex because we do life insurance here. There's a
We
place
do.
for it.
We do. But from a planning process, right? It's what the client receives. 164 pages versus 15 to 20 pages.
Man, I walked into a this was years ago. I walked into a client, working class people, okay, long time client. I walked into their dining room, and they had met with another financial planner just on a whim, someone they knew, and she puts in front of me and this is no exaggeration, y'all. I promise you, I'm not exaggerating. This report was at least I want to say 100 pages, but for the sake of not exaggerating, it was probably at least 75. It was a stack of graphs and charts, and the recommendation at the end of the complicated plan, which probably was never presented to the client, just handed to the client, was buying $1,200 a month of life insurance. This client was on Social Security, maybe 3,000 a month of income in total for Social Security between husband and spouse, late 60s, and working just to make ends meet. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, what on what planet does this make sense? In what universe did this other planner, quote unquote, think that this was a good idea? And how did they convince this client that it was something worth considering?
With these quote unquote, and I'm doing air quotes here, planners, they're using these programs. And the programs state that you have to go through each one of these categories. You got to go through retirement, got to go through life insurance. They're going to throw in some of these other modules inside this financial plan, and it's to back up their recommendations. Now, in those programs, I can get the program to spit out whatever I want to do. All right. So if I'm gearing it to one specific type of product, then I can put numbers in there. But when I pull this out in front of this client, and it's 75 to 100 different pages, and I'm going through each one of these modules with them, and I'm showing, okay, here's what we can do with this particular module. This is how it's going to protect your family. This is the amount of income that you can pull out of it to supplement retirement. It looks great on paper.
It's going to cost you 40% of your income is going to be locked up in a life insurance premium. I was at a seminar. This was years and years and years ago. An attorney was presenting on a very complicated tax strategy. I'm not even going to get into the specifics of it. Okay. Super complicated. And I was tracking them, and I went up to him after and I said, how many people, my first question was, how many of these strategies have you actually executed? And he goes, none. And I'm like, why are you even presenting it? He goes, because it sets me apart from other people. So I'm like, you confuse that. You confuse people. You make people think that they can pursue a particular strategy because it's incredibly complicated, and then you never execute it. Like, I don't know. To me, that feels a little bit dishonest. But that's just me. And here's the problem with some of these strategies. And let me first say this: I do think there's situations and scenarios that demand complexity. Okay. There are people whose situations demand complicated strategies. So I'm not against at all pursuing strategies that are complicated. However, the challenge with some of these strategies is not only are they hard to understand sometimes, they're expensive to implement, and the problem isn't the implementation. The problem is the expense to continue to maintain them. And then whatever you do today, oftentimes with these complex strategies, you can't unwind them in the future. And if you do, they're expensive to unwind. And I don't think that most people get to that point. And most people, like the consumer, this is not on the consumer, this is on the planner, this is on the advisor presenting these strategies, is that oftentimes these complex strategies commit an individual to years and years and years, and oftentimes a lifetime of a cost of compliance to continue. By compliance, it could be a cost to maintain the strategy. It could be a cost of filing legal documents. It could be a cost of filing tax returns. And the tax savings today, when you look at it over a lifetime, are nowhere near the cost to maintain, to keep these things going.
I've seen, and you mentioned life insurance, and
you mentioned life insurance.
No, I did. Okay.
Did.
Well, one of us did. But so I've seen some of these plans that utilize a life insurance product as one of the tools. I've seen many of these where 8, 9, 10 years down the line, the client can't afford them anymore. And the client is coming in and they're terminating these plans, and it affects everything that they were trying to accomplish. And sure. And that's the part that's hard to sit down and talk to these clients about and say, look, your planner didn't do what was in your best interest.
I mean, maybe it's hard. I want to be careful. I want to be careful.
Yeah.
I want to be careful.
So let me back up with that. At the time, yes, it was. But if you're not looking at what could potentially happen in the future, then, as you said, you have to unwound these strategies that were put in place.
Yeah,
and that's the hard part, because you see what went into it over an 8 to 9 year time frame, and now you're having to back it up and figure out a strategy that's in your best interest at that particular time.
Yeah. I want to be careful not to say that someone didn't do something in someone's best interest in that time. I wasn't in that room. I didn't have all the facts. I don't know what all the variables were. I don't know what those conversations looked like.
Yeah.
But
Look, I early in my career, I utilized some of those products and some of those tools
we still
to be
do, and
able to
there's nothing
create
wrong with them. There's
strategies.
nothing wrong with them. I mean, I mean, we're having this partially. We're having this conversation. It's partially top of mind right now because we're working on a case right now that is complicated.
Hmm.
That it does demand a strategy that is not run of the mill. And the question is, does it make sense? And that's kind of where you and I are deliberating. We're going back and forth saying, hey, does this make sense? Does this work in this situation? Is this the situation where you do execute something like this that is
Right.
more complicated? And there's a lot of questions that go into it. And I think it's one of those, I think whenever we as planners present a strategy that is a little bit more complicated and it costs a little bit more over time. By cost, I'm not saying like you're buying something, but there's a committed amount of contribution. We have to be a little bit more judicious and ask questions like, hey, okay, what's the risk? Is the
Mhm.
reward greater than the risk the client's going to take? And the risk being the amount of money that's going to be committed to this strategy.
Right. And I
And
think that's the benefit of having you and I sit next to each other. I mean, yesterday we went, I mean, what, 45 minutes? We were going back and forth and looking at ideas and solutions and coming up with, at the end of the day, what is it that we're trying to achieve?
that's right.
Right?
What's the problem we're
What
trying to
is the
solve? That's right.
correct?
Yeah.
And if you don't know what the problem is that you're trying to solve, it's hard to come up with a solution that's going to fit that specific one.
We were given a presentation yesterday, and someone asked. It was a good question. It was a good question, but we've heard this question all the time. I mean, this is probably one of the most common things that I get from people. Like, hey, I need a trust, right? So the question was about our recommendation on living trusts and what kind of trust should I have? And I don't know if my answer was good or not, but I'm like, I don't know. Why do you like what problem are you trying to solve? Why do you think you need a trust? I mean, it wasn't that curt and that short, but that was kind of the exchange. Um, is I my go-to is, hey, if there's a simple way to solve a problem, let's do it. Here's why. When something is simple, there's less moving parts. It's clearer. People can understand it. And when you can understand your strategy, you're more likely to stay committed to it, right? And if you're more likely to stay committed to it, you're more likely to solve the problem that you were presented with over time. If your strategy is complicated, you're going to have to convince yourself every year when you're paying for the cost to maintain that strategy, you're going to have to reconvince yourself why you did it. And if you, as the advisor, presented it, maybe you have to resell it, quote unquote, reconvince the person why they're doing this. Um, so complexity may feed our egos. Like, oh, I got this fancy trust. I'm doing this fancy employee benefit thing, right? It makes us feel like we're high net worth, whatever. It makes us feel it's like you go to social events, and we've been in these conversations. Someone finds out that you're a financial planner, like, oh, let me tell you about this stock, right? I bought this company, and like, man, I made 70% in 3 weeks, and you're like, oh man, that's fantastic. And tell me about the stocks that you lost money on. Well, I mean, we like complexity. We like that kind of stuff. It feeds our ego. But man, simplicity generally wins out.
And I'll leave you with this: your response to them by asking, well, you know, tell me more, right? And that is your go-to. Tell me more.
I'm
Because if you
curious, man.
don't,
Tell me more
right?
about that.
Because if you wouldn't have asked her that question and you would have just answered her, and let's say you would have told her, go do the living trust, it may not have fit what she was trying to accomplish. And so I had an opportunity to speak to her after you left, and I started asking her questions. Tell me what you're trying to accomplish. Tell me what you have, what you plan to have later. And she appreciated that. And from that conversation, we'll probably get a call from her because no one else had asked her, tell me more.
And I feel like I have to constantly clarify what I'm saying here. My frustration isn't with you, listener. It's not with you. It's not with you, client. It's not with you, prospect. It's not with the general public. But that's not my frustration. When someone asks me a question about some complicated topic, it's typically because they're hearing about it or reading about it somewhere else, and I'm fine with that. That's not my criticism isn't towards the people who want to pursue these, because at the end of the day, who wants to pay more taxes? At the end of the day, you want to protect your assets. At the end of the day, you want to make the best decision that makes sense for you as the individual. So I don't fault anyone for hearing about something and wanting to pursue it. Well, I think one of the other issues is oftentimes, particularly in our world of social media, a lot of financial advice is given prescriptively.
And Erik, when they do get that prescriptive advice, when they go to their advisor, to their planner, and they're asking those questions, I believe it's really to get more information, not to come and tell you, hey, look, I found this and this is the best thing out there. A lot of times they're coming to us because they want to know more. They want to get feedback from us. They want to know what we think.
And that's my point. My point is my frustration doesn't lie with the public. My frustration lies with our industry. My frustration lies with at the presentation. I loved how we were introduced yesterday at the presentation. We were introduced, an individual introducing us. We've done a lot of work with, and we've collaborated with professionally for some time, so she knows us well. And she introduced us as Xavier Angel and Erik Garcia, certified financial planner. And then she asked the crowd, "Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that word? Certified. This isn't your what'd she say, your cousin or your brother-in-law who's trying to sell you insurance." They're certified financial planners. I thought that was interesting, because you're right, and we kind of both came up. We kind of both came up in a world early in our careers where we were taught complex strategies, and again, these complex strategies work in the right situation. They have their place when you're dealing oftentimes with high net worth situations, when you're dealing with complicated estate planning, when you're dealing with entrepreneurs that are cash flowing quite a bit at their business. These strategies are viable options. The reality is most people are not prospects for some of these complex strategies.
And I'm going to throw this out there as well. No matter what the strategy is that you implement, you want to make sure that you're reviewing those strategies on a regular basis. And I say regular, and it may be annually, biannually, whatever it may be, because things happen, situations change, and what is placed on the table, what strategy is created for you today, it may need to be adjusted or amended 2-3 years down the line.
Yeah. Certainly. And anything that commits you to a certain contribution amount over time, or some type of compliance filing, whether it's a tax return or some type of legal filing on a regular basis, you definitely have to maintain it, because laws change. That's another thing. Laws change, right? Tax laws change. The estate exclusions change. So I remember early in my career, we did right by the client, right? The estate tax minimums were a lot lower. Had this trust, and the state tax laws completely changed. And looking back, it's like, wow, that client, spent a lot of money on that. Now, it was a good recommendation at the time. It was appropriate at the time. But looking back, like, oh my gosh, like maybe, yeah. Anyway, here's kind of how I approach this stuff. And I've been using this for quite some time. If I can't explain it to a kid, then I'm wondering if it's an appropriate strategy. Now, I know, well, come on, like how's a kid going to understand, the complexities of tax laws? But the idea is, if I can't understand it simply to explain it to someone to where they can understand it, maybe it's too complicated. Maybe, maybe. You agree?
I agree 100%, Eric. I think you have to be able to explain whatever that strategy is that you're implementing, that you're presenting, in a way that anyone can understand it. Because what people don't want to do is, if I create a strategy for you today, and you're sitting down at a table and you're talking to other people, and someone asks you, well, tell me more, right? If you can't explain what you did, and maybe not to the detail part of it, but a 50,000 foot view, then you're probably going to start sitting back. You're going to be uncomfortable, and now you're going to start questioning what it is what it is that you've implemented.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, and end of rant. I'm done.
Yes.
I feel better. Thanks for listening. In summary, in summary, um, I think that whenever you listener, okay, if you're being presented a financial plan, ask questions, push for understanding. Don't settle for whatever the advisor or the planner is presenting, just because it sounds good. Complex does not equal effective. Don't let it feed your ego or your sense of I don't know. It's the hey, this is a strategy. I get these from every now and then. I'll get an email or a text from a family member, and it's some YouTube video, and it always starts off like this: secrets of the rich are available to you. And it's like this 20-minute video on on a planning strategy, secrets of the rich. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like right off of there, available to you, stroking and fanning your ego. I'm like,
because then you have to subscribe to their channel.
Then it messes my algorithm. All of a sudden I'm starting to get all these crazy hacks of the rich that you should like. Oh my gosh, people. Anyway, all right. I said my rant was over, but seek simplicity. Simplicity is beautiful. Beautiful. Pursue complexity when needed. Hire someone who you trust. Hire someone who you believe has your best interest and has displayed that they have your best interest at heart.
Perfect. Love that rant. Love the rant, Eric.
Hashtag end a rant.
If you guys enjoy what you're hearing on our podcast, please subscribe to where you get your podcast.
All right, y'all, go out there, plan wisely, live confidently.